the Florida Writer Podcast, a discussion about writing and other things.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of the Florida Writer Podcast. I'm your host, Allison Nissen, and today I am lucky enough to have with me Kate Zarczynski. Kate, welcome to the podcast.
For having me.
We are very excited to talk to you today about writing. I understand that you have completed your first book.
I have. Honestly, I did write a book in law school, but it was horrible. And that's usually what happens when you start writing. But no, I'm very proud of this book, and I'm in the process of figuring out how I'm going to publish it. But, you know, it's getting a lot of really positive feedback, so I'm excited.
All right, take me from the really bad book that you wrote in law school. What did you learn along the way? I mean, law school wasn't yesterday, so you had a little bit of legal practice in the middle.
Yes. So 20 years actually between leaving law school when I wrote that book and completing this one. And I wouldn't say I was writing in between. I wrote that novel. That was the dream. And then I started a very intense job working 80 hours a week, and there was no time to write. I then around the age, so that's like 27. And then at 32, 33, I had my first child. I had some time at home and I did start writing. But I was one of those writers where I would get a story idea and get really excited. I would write 30 or 40 pages and then I would get stuck and I would give up, right? Because you hit a point in a story if you don't have a clear vision where you get stuck in your writing. And so I would give up. And then I got, life moved on, more babies, very busy. And I had really not been writing before last summer when I found this old manuscript that was 100 pages written. I had not probably written in 12 years. I just got super busy with my kids. I have 3 kids that are close together in age. I was doing all the parental, volunteering, this and that, managing our lives. And, it was my year of no. I was feeling stressed out and like I hadn't really done anything for myself. And I found this old manuscript and I thought, oh my gosh, I know this story and I know how to finish it. And so I sat down and very quickly, found that I was writing 6-7 hours a day pretty easily, churning out 5 to 10 pages and then editing. It's that you sit and you write something, you print it. At least for me, every writer's different. I was doing a daily edit. I was kind of doing a daily, and I didn't outline, but I would in that segment knowing where I was going to write the next segment. I never, so I didn't have an outline. I was really a pantser, right? A fly by the seat of their pants type writer where the creativity comes in each scene. But it was just kind of flowing out of me at this kind of warp speed that I felt like, okay, I just got to get this out. It's time.
Were the characters speaking to you?
They were. And what's interesting is this was a novel I had started 12 years ago, and it was about 5 women that are friends. And they were kind of outlined, and then they kind of changed because obviously I'm 12 years older. I was 34, and then all of a sudden I was 45. And I aged the characters. They were 34 and I aged them to 40 because 40 was much more interesting to me for women. And it was that I was reflecting back on turning 40 at 45, and kind of all the huge shifts and changes that are pretty permanent at this point, and you're kind of closing the window on youth. And so these women were coming to me and they're very distinct. They each are, there's 2 that have, 4 of the 5 have big careers, but one's married, one's not, one's divorced, one has kids, because they were all on different paths. And so I will say having multiple characters was probably a daunting kind of, torture to me, as your first novel, to try to not have flat characters, to try to really create 5 women that, come off the page was the challenge that I kept retooling to make sure they had the right depth that people would connect to them. But they did. I did a lot of walks and I would just play out scenes. I would sit, in the afternoon with my kids at their activities, and I would just sit in the car and think about the story and think about the characters and take notes on my phone, and then the next day when the kids were at school, I would put those notes to, into the novel or then create the scene that I was thinking about. But it becomes where they're with you all the time, at least for me.
Do you have one character that you like better than the others?
That's like asking who's your favorite child. No, but we do have favorite children. No, yes, I think there's bits of and pieces of people in your life that maybe you create a character, and so one character was a little, well, at least in theory, was modeled after a woman I worked for who I really admired and looked up to, and so I was a young associate, and she was a partner in her 40s, and she's a lawyer in the book. And so I kind of like her because I just had such an endearing feeling and respect for this woman. And that's not that she's this person, but that's who I wanted that character to come across as. She's kind of everyone's favorite. I've had, 10 or 15 beta readers and I all get the same feedback. She's the favorite. So I think I brought her to life in the way I was hoping to.
That's really interesting that you say that. I find that there's certain stories I have that I really connect to. And then I want to dissect that story and think, how did I actually write that one? Because I want all my other stuff to sound just like the one I completed. Yeah. And so I do find that a big challenge. Would you like to go back and analyze what you did to her to maybe for any characters you write in the future?
Right. I wrote some of the characters to be unlikable. Right. So because we're humans and nobody's perfect and everybody has faults and everybody makes mistakes. And so she was just the friend we all want to have. You know what I mean? She was not perfect, but she's kind of the hero of the story. She's the thread that holds the friend group together. And she's the one who's had the hardest path at the same time. So I do think about it. It was a good lesson in getting the reader feedback. Most people, they want a happy ending, and most people do. Like that was a few of my stories. There's 5 stories and 2 of them don't wrap up in a nice, pretty bow. And a lot of the readers were like, but I needed that to end better. And I'm like, but that's not life. And so I can't have all 5 of my characters in one weekend have a happy ending, but it was just interesting, the feedback, and most people are looking for escapism and something that makes them happy, more than they got stressed out when some of the characters were going through some things they didn't like or were making them angry in the decisions they made. But I do think every story needs to have one character that people really connect with, I do. And at least for me too, that's the character that keeps you coming back to read and stay engaged in the story.
Now that you've completed your novel,
yes.
Do you read other books differently as a writer than you did before?
It's astounding. Now that I've completed it and, done, not only completed it, but done 6 months of work of editing it, right? And trying to figure out and putting it in things like autocrit and like getting very like technical about the writing, right? How many adverbs am I using? Is it showing versus telling? Like all those how's my grammar? All that stuff. Then I read a book and I'm like really having a hard time enjoying books because my mind is thinking about how the narrative is or the descriptions or, oh, they use that word too much or, and so it is funny how that you become a much more judgmental reader where before I did, or, even point of view, like, oh, they switched it. They didn't stay consistent or, all those things jump out at you once you start writing.
Head hopping. That drives me crazy.
Yeah.
Like, wait, I was in this person's head and now I'm over here. I'm so confused.
Yeah. That's the whole thing. The point of view, you got to keep it consistent, right? At least in each chapter or, however you break it up. But it is funny how it makes reading more difficult. Like I pulled out, I was a huge Twilight fan, loved it. And the new one just came out and I still love her story making, but I had a really hard time with her writing. And I think it's because I'm now on such a judgmental track with it,
It gets easier. I think it gets easier to separate the writer from the reader within yourself, or at least for me, it has. I've gotten to the point where I just am going for the story, and I'm not a skimmer, by the way. I actually read like word for word. It makes it a little more challenging, but I'll just say, you know what? I'm going to enjoy this character, and I'm not going to worry about the writing at all, or I'm going to enjoy the plot.
Well, and that's kind of my point of Twilight. Like ultimately, talk about a multi-million-dollar success. And yes, she's not the strongest technical writer. And the same could be said for Hunger Games, but gosh, they know how to write a story. gosh, they know how to get characters that you care about. And that's really the goal at the end of writing a story, and I'll read literary books that are beautifully written, but I'm not engaged. I'm not connected to the character, And so, it is that interesting, it's that sweet spot when someone can do both, right? And I'm not a big literary reader. I tend to like commercial fiction, that's just me. I mean, I'll throw a literary book in every once in a while, just to say that I read it. But my choice is, more commercial fiction.
I'm with you on that one. I like to be in book clubs because they make me read outside my comfort zone. Other than that, I'm like, let's see, what author have I read 45 of?
Yeah, because they make you happy and you're going to like, the story, and especially like when I get to summer, I'm all like, give me a sappy romance, give me some escapism, I just get in that mindset. Then the kids go back to school and I get a little more literary and maybe I want to read a memoir, something, maybe nonfiction, some parenting book that's, caught my eye. But at the end of the day, I'm just commercial fiction. I love a good thriller. I love a good murder mystery. I love a good romance.
You sound like your bookshelf probably resembles my bookshelf.
Yeah.
But that's not what I write, by the way. So
right.
It's really different.
Nonfiction. You write nonfiction.
Yeah, nonfiction. Although maybe I feel like my life is fiction sometimes. How do you stay inspired? Day after day, you're talking about the grind. You go in and every day you're working and you're editing and you're working and you're editing.
I think it's the characters. So I've started my second novel, the trying to get published is a waiting game. And, I'm in talks and, all this stuff. So I realized I had to start writing again because that's what brings me joy. And I think if a story comes to you, and this one, my second novel, actually, I was out for a beach walk, listening to some music I love, and the whole entire story came to me and I came home and did the outline. And I hadn't had that experience with the first novel I wrote. So because I have such a clear picture, I have started writing and I'm not having writer's block and I know where it's going, but it's that juggling act, right? So now I'm trying to research agents and research publishing houses and think about a social media platform and all that business side of it when I really want to be writing. And so I find myself losing time to write, which is frustrating but you have to do that back end part of it to actually sell your book, right? And to actually have people read your story, which is what my great hope is, that people will connect to my story. And so it's been hard, like this week, even my kids, I only have a window of about 8 to 2, 8 to 3. And then I've got to be in the car schlepping kids all over the place, and then doing dinner and bedtime. And then I'm too tired. I might read at night, but I sometimes will read my edits at night. I'll get to a point where I can write for 2 or 3 hours or 2 hours, get 5 pages, maybe hammered out if I'm lucky. And then I kind of edit them at night and then try to put those edits in at the end of the week. But, right now I'm not having a problem with inspiration because I have a clear story. I think it's different when you don't know what you want to write. I remember in the past when I would write and I would get stuck, and that was what made it easy to quit and go do other things, but, I'm just enjoying, fulfilling my dream for myself that had kind of really been put away, and so right now inspiration isn't a problem.
That sounds really exciting. It sounds like you've figured out the balance.
Trying.
Yeah, well, that writing is a business, and that's where a lot of people they don't realize that it's a business, but you have to do it on your own, really.
Yes, I'm in that. I'm networking. I'm reading articles on all the different ways you publish and how to do this and that, and it's just a lot of work that I naively wasn't quite aware of, but I'm up for the challenge. It's just making it harder to within a day get as much accomplished as I would like to get accomplished. And I'm sure, everyone who's a working mom, everyone who has a dream finds that, and time management is really hard when you're a writer from the standpoint of it's really easy to procrastinate, right? Because there's nobody you're reporting into. There's nobody checking on you, so you have to keep yourself with some goals for the week. I try to have goals for the week. Okay. Did I write this many pages, or at least did I spend this amount of time on my book? And then did I spend this amount of time thinking about, like I said, the social media platform and how am I going to execute, release, and, make this happen. And so, but like I said, I don't like that part, but I have to learn to like it.
Well, you need to look at it like it's team building.
Right.
And then some people are lucky enough to find an accountability partner. So the accountability.
I would like to find somebody here that I could, we could keep each other on track. But so far it's new for me. So it's exciting. I haven't been doing this 5 years, I'm in year 2. So right now I'm in that kind of newbie. Oh, it's so wonderful and exciting,
Well, I hope it stays that way for you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Kate, how can people get in touch with you?
So my email is, I'm working on getting a website going, but it's not there yet. klzarczynski@gmail.com. And my cell phone, but I don't think I want to give that out. But yeah, my email right now, and I'm on social media. I'm on Facebook as Kate Zarczynski. I'm on Instagram as Kate Z. So K_A_T_E_Z. So that's the easiest way to get in touch with me.
I like that Instagram handle.
Yeah.
Handle? Is it still a handle? It is a
handle. Yes. I changed it recently. I thought it looked spunkier when I did it that way.
It does sound like it's spunky. That's very cool. Well, Kate Zarczynski, how'd I do?
You got it.
Thank you for stopping by. Are you ready for our rapid fire questions?
Yes, fire away.
Have you ever won a trophy?
Yes. You want to know what I won a trophy for?
Yeah.
Sports. Obviously, I played a bunch of sports when I was little, and also piano. I did piano competitions, and I would place in those.
Very good.
Yes.
Have you ever worn curlers in your hair?
Oh, yes. And we called it junior high, middle school. I had volleyball and basketball practice before school, and we would go in the pink sponge rollers because everybody had a perm and everybody wanted their curls to stay. So we would do volleyball and basketball practice with pink sponge rollers in our hair.
That's a great story. That sounds like you need to write about.
I was standard in the 80s. Come on.
And finally, what is the happiest room in your house?
Oh, wow. Probably my daughter's bathroom because it has this wildflower wallpaper print in kind of like rainbow colors. And you go in there and it just makes you happy. I love color. So it makes me happy because it's very vibrant. And there's a quote from The Wizard of Oz on the wall about somewhere over the rainbow. It just makes me happy.
I love that. That sounds wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, Kate, once again, thank you for stopping by.
Thank you for having me.
You all have been listening to another edition of the Florida Writer Podcast. Allison out. Kate Zarczynski earned a Bachelor of Arts from Northwestern University and a Juris Doctorate from the University of Texas at Austin. She relocated to Florida and is now happily residing in a small beach town. She wrote her first novel as a love letter to female friendship. For more information about Kate, visit her on Instagram at KateZ. Kate_A_T_E_Z. For more information about the Florida Writers Association, visit us on the web at floridawriters.com.